Okay, I think we're ready to get started, and we will start with the first speaker for your 3-minute intro, Bob Mackay.
Okay, well, I'll start my timer here as well. There we go. Alrighty, so I was just thinking, I was reflecting on this today. First of all, Megan, I want to thank you very much for organizing this and everybody else that's helping and organizing. But it's a Green Party thing, so it's not really going to be like a political debate. Debate, yes, but Green Party people generally have the same objectives. So the idea, I think, is more to decide how we get there as opposed to where we're going and what we're doing. So Bob Mackay, Saanich Gulf Islands. So I'm lucky. I have Elizabeth May as our candidate and representative, and as well, of course, MLA is Green as well. And yeah, I mean, I'm on Salt Spring. I think many of you know, but one of my precious memories is being in Moby's on Salt Spring Island when Elizabeth, when we first got her elected way back in 2011. So I've been at this for a while. I'm on the executive on the electoral district. In fact, I just got a call earlier this afternoon. And I'm also on the Fairville Canada National Council as well. And one of my big things is proportional representation. My history, my wife was the one that talked me into the Green Party. She said, let's go to the high school. And we went and we saw, and then somehow I ended up driving Elizabeth in the Sydney Parade way back when. And then, as I mentioned, in 2011, we managed to get her elected, first Green in Canada. It was phenomenal. In 2015, only Elizabeth got elected. And at that point, I was ticked off, mostly because of the voting system. So that's when I got involved and became president of the Green Party of Canada. And we could talk more about that later. Anyways, 2019, I called, we actually wanted to support Dave Murner, Russell Cui, and Lydia Whitson. So from Salt Spring, we got a team together and we went and did that. My skill set, I've got a BCom, an MBA, and an MA. Governance you've seen, and you wanted me to tell you what I intend to do. I want to help the party. That's why I'm here. And I'm even thinking of forming a past presidents group. But anyways, the other biggie is to listen and represent you. I think that people on the National Council have to not come up with all their own ideas, but they should represent the people in their area, and also provide for a succession, a mentor, to mentor somebody. This says dismiss. There we go. My time's up.
Thanks very much, Bob.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have George Orr.
Oh, I have a timer somewhere.
Well, we are timing you.
Okay, well, kill me when I'm done. My name's George Orr, 40 plus years in journalism, daily news, documentary film production. I taught journalism for a long time. I know the journalism and communications game, and that's the skill set I want to bring to this. And the Green Party as an entity is kind of frozen. It doesn't see the process of journalism as a series of opportunities. It sees journalists essentially as the enemy to some degree that we have to manage or work around. To me, it's all an opportunity, but it's an opportunity that requires a skill and an expertise to put it into place. And that's what I bring. Before the election, Vision Green came out. Great idea. It wasn't put out by head office. I saw it on CPAC. I sat down and spent the weekend writing Vision Green for journalists, how the journalism community could come together and look at climate change as a unified force as opposed to a competitive force. I did this before once with free trade 30 years ago, brought journalists across the country together. It worked to create a unified conversation. I took that idea to head office and they said, this is interesting, we'll get back to you. Never heard a word. 2 weeks later, University of Calgary were the genesis of essentially the Green approach to climate change in journalism. I'm an ideas person. I'm a get it done person. I'm in a big hurry. I have gray hair, and I want to keep my hair, but I want to set it on fire in this exercise. And I think BC needs to be heard. I know the province. I've covered it over the past 40 years. I've been through a lot of it as a reporter and a producer and an assignment editor. I know the place. I know the history. I know the characters. I have a sense of how BC is changing, and I want to take that to Ottawa. And I need your vote. Done.
Thanks very much, George.
Somebody else can have the rest of my time.
That's great. Okay, next we have Nick Popel.
Hey folks, I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you today from the traditional unceded lands of the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. My name is Nick Popel, and I use him and his pronouns. I currently serve on the Vancouver Centre EDA as a director at large and as the vice chairperson of the Green Party of Vancouver. I really believe that I've got the perspective and the experience that will help represent the voices of BC on federal council. On these boards, I've helped foster a safe, inclusive environment where voices are fairly heard and respected. I currently reside in Vancouver. I was born and raised in the Lower Mainland and went to both UBC and UVic, where I attained a BFA in theater. You'd be surprised how much a theater degree comes in handy in politics. No one told me that in school, but this is very useful. I've continued my career in live events and in the entertainment industry, working in theater, film, and video games, developing strong skills in production and facility management. I'm extremely fortunate that my work has taken me all over BC, touring from Vancouver to Victoria to Haida Gwaii and beyond. I recently worked on the very inspiring campaign in Van East, where we managed to get 14.5% of the vote against the strongest NDP riding in the entire country. My proudest green achievement, though, lies with the 2018 Vancouver municipal election, where we elected 9 out of 10 candidates, delivering the largest green caucus in all of Canada. Over that campaign, I took the lead on locating and renovating a nice campaign office right on Broadway, logistical advice, and I helped organize the filming and release of over 60 campaign videos. If elected, there's 3 things I really want to focus on. The first one is listening to the members of our EDAs. Communication is lacking, and it's key to moving this party forward. I want to hear from each of you. The second thing I want to do is advocate for the real allocation of resources for a new office on the West Coast and staff. The third one, and this one's very dear to me, we have to action on diversity and inclusion. These are the foundations of which we will grow the party and move forward together. If you want to know a little bit more about me, you can check me out on my website at www.nickpopel.ca for my bio in my video. And I just want to say, regardless of how the vote goes, I pledge to work with Greens across Canada and taking our party to the next level. I also want to take this moment right here. Big shout out to Megan and Mark for all their incredible work organizing and putting these debates together. This is a huge opportunity for members across the country to learn about us and see what we stand for. So I just want to finish off by saying, Megan, Mark, you guys are doing God's work. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Nick. All right, next we have Lisa Steele.
Hello there. Okay, it's unmuted. Yes. Okay. So I am Dr. Lisa Steele. I am a specialist and a pathologist at Royal Inland Hospital in Kamloops. I have been a Green Party member for only a year. I joined after my husband, Ian Curry, decided to run in the 2019 election. What I would bring to the role of BC rep on the National Council is a fresh perspective, lots of experience in leadership roles in large, complex organizations, and a proven ability to say what needs to be said. What I do not bring is any knowledge, experience, or interest in the internal squabbles which seem to be undermining progress at the national level. For the last month, I've been consumed with the COVID crisis. This is definitely the biggest challenge our country has faced since World War II. And what I've seen come out of this crisis is what can be done by a group of people when the petty infighting that's part of big bureaucracy melts away as people work towards a common goal. That kind of attitude was exactly the sort of cooperation and attitude that I saw at the riding level during Ian's campaign during the federal election. I thought that attitude was amazing. The volunteers were incredible, and that kind of grassroots driven movement was incredibly consuming. I had hoped that that attitude would continue after the election and would be a prominent feature of the national party. For the last month and since this election process has started, I have been consumed by COVID, and I have not been paying attention as to what's happening at the national level, but Ian has, and he tells me that there appear to be competing factions in the party. There are people jockeying for seats at the table, and they're pushing different agendas. This has to stop because it's not productive. This is what I would like to see the council do, and what I would bring to the council if elected. I'd like to see an overhaul of the reporting structure at the council level so that there's transparency and accountability to the members. I would like to see a complete postmortem of that last election with data, without redactions, without the trade secrets. I would like all of that data shared with the grassroots, thereby showing respect for all of the grassroots participation, which has made this party great. The data needs to be shared, and then input needs to be sought, and then a collaborative strategy made to go forward. Ian's telling me I got 10 seconds left. Anyways, it makes sense to have a doctor on the federal, sense to have someone who's different on the federal council. The goal is to expand the party and win seats. This party can do that with all we have already going for us, but what we need is a clear strategy to broaden our appeal. And that's what I think I can do. So thanks for the time.
Thank you, Lisa. Just to say, the screen is saying your bandwidth is low, and you were a little bit choppy during parts of what you were saying.
Thanks for that feedback. I have no idea how this is transmitting. I'm hoping it's going well.
It was pretty okay. Okay, next we have Dana Taylor.
Good evening. Hello, British Columbia. I too am speaking to you from the Squamish unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Lil'wat nations. My name is Dana Taylor. I joined the Green Party because I thought and believed that it was and is the party of hope. I joined because the Green Party was a party of values, principles. First, with the BC Greens, I put my name forward in the absence of others in 2017 because I felt and believed there were others in the riding like me who wished to do politics differently. Knowing no one in the party or active in the riding, I ran a bare bones campaign with a family and a handful of volunteers who signed on. I came second to the incumbent Liberal with 29% of the vote. I knew Green was alive in the riding. I joined the federal EDA's board for the next 2 years. We prepared for the 2019 election. I campaigned and won the nomination, and with the extraordinary effort of several party loyalists, we worked hard. Despite several bumps of encouragement from our leader, Elizabeth May, we finished a disappointing third with a respectable 22.4% of the vote, and further evidence that Green was alive in this district. I'm now running with the commitment to fix the things that don't work and improve on the things that might have been expected to occur from a national campaign but didn't. We can't afford to pretend that nothing wrong happened and that problems don't exist. I have 3 key objectives. I seek to serve the party membership who expect that each electoral district will benefit from an energetic year-round effort from the national party to assist EDAs to grow and activate the membership. To serve a Green Party that communicates and provides messaging that elevates the party's policy and platform to capture the public's attention and interest throughout the country year in and out. To serve and ensure that the Green Party meets its targets of diversity in membership, leadership, and attitude, and specifically that to close the generational divide that by ensuring that young Greens are mentored and have positions of real responsibility commensurate with experience and commitment. I will work hard to address and put to rest any complaints of not being heard or pushed to the kids' table. I've spent a career as an executive of the private sector for not-for-profit trade associations, a former elected North Vancouver City Councillor, a defender of our local environment and the ecology of Howe Sound, founder of Canada's only Green Chamber of Commerce, a current member of the Sustainable Business Group Board of Change, and more recently a member, as mentioned, of our local EDA board. Details of my background and experience and key proposals I support can be found on my website at danataylor.ca. I thank you for your attention. I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much. And I also have to say, I think we have more people attending than Ontario did. Good to see. Thanks.
You are right, and I'm watching the counter go up, and it would be both concerning and thrilling if we actually hit 100, because we're only allowed to have 100 people on our Zoom call. So that would be pretty exciting. Thank you for that, Dana. Okay, and Dana, I'll just ask you to mute yourself. Okay, so we're going to have, I will present the first question and possibly the second, but just to remind people, in the chat, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, sort of in the middle of the screen, there's a little icon that says chat. You can post your questions in there. Mark DeBruin will be watching the chat and will be seeking out good questions to try to stump our candidates with. And also, you know, you could have a discussion in the chat. Yesterday on the Saskatchewan and Territories Zoom call, there was a really interesting thread that started happening in the chat. So you be sure if you've got some questions to put them in there. So we will start with the first question, and a few of you have mentioned young people. We had a session with the Young Greens the other day, and if you missed that one, it was an amazing session. But the question is, these Young Greens were unanimous in their view that federal council did not adequately support the Young Greens. How do you think council could better support the Young Green wing? And this isn't talking about bringing young people into the party or getting young people to vote for us. This is your thoughts on how council could better support the Young Greens. And we will start this with George. Go ahead, George.
Among other things, I taught in post-secondary for 20 years. And part of what I enjoyed about that was I was in the company of people who were forming thoughts, who were coming together with their view of the world, who felt disempowered, who were looking to find the handles. And the regret I had at retiring from teaching was to lose that connection. I guess we support them by creating a platform upon which they can do what they need to do. I'm part of this generation. Our job is to finish off the platform and get out of the way and provide them with the tools they need. So in terms of going out and peddling memberships, won't work. In terms of getting people to vote green, I found that fairly successful during the election in terms of getting people to join. We do not currently offer anything that looks appealing in terms of joining a party. We bring old values and old structures to a new world. And I think we have to examine the structures and the values we bring and make them in tune with what people want as opposed to what we think they should want.
Thank you, George. All right, we'll go to Nick Popel.
Thanks. I got to check in on that youth session. I've actually listened to every session so far, and it was very inspiring. I know a lot of Young Greens, and we have to listen to them, and we're not. Federal council hasn't listened. The party hasn't listened. I've witnessed it firsthand where members, CEOs have said, they're there. That's good. Go along now. And this is so discouraging for them. We look at the Greta Thunberg, look at the young leaders today who are really driving this process, who are really at the forefront of this environmental cause, because this is their planet they're going to inherit. Most of us won't be around when it's at its worst. They will be. So we have to listen to them. We have to trust them. We have to make space for them. I was so fortunate when I got involved with the Civic Greens. They made space for me. They got me involved. They actually had to drag me in, kicking and screaming a little bit to get on their board of directors because I thought it was a little too soon. But they did such an incredible job of making me feel welcome, safe, and including me and allowing me to bring what I could. We need to do the same for our Young Greens. They're the leaders. We should really be taking our cues from them.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, next we'll go to Lisa.
Thanks, Megan. I think that transparency needs to be at the forefront of this process. And the federal council needs to be transparent in what it's doing, what it's done, and the information that it provides to engage young Greens. From what I see at the federal council level at this point in time, they seem to be a very secretive sort of inner circle that governs without actually disclosing what their strategy and what their approach and agenda is. So I believe that the younger Greens, the younger generation, very much values transparency, and that we need to start with that, and that'll go a long ways.
Thanks, Lisa. Next, Dana.
Yes, hi, thanks. Frankly, I was stunned when I listened to I too attended the youth and watched and observed. Between that and conversations I've had with some young members over the course of a number of years now, including obviously through campaigning, the difference between sort of the experience I've had in the campaign versus what I've since heard about happening in the National Party is just outrageous in my view. I as I say, I was stunned. Every organization, the one I work with in my career in industry, is preparing for the future. And they're doing that by making sure that younger people are involved at every level, that they're active in things that enable young people to take the active roles. The organization I last ran, we had a group we called Next Gen. And that Next Gen group was there to help move up through the organization, take over responsibilities, take over committees, chairs, positions of power. The question is, what will federal council? Federal council has to make room, plain and simple, be it through co-chairing committees, handing chairs over, and specific areas of responsibilities they carve out for themselves. We're hearing a lot about that. We're going to hear more. Let's pay attention and ensure that the next federal council makes that room, and we don't hear that complaint anymore, as I said in my own opening speech. Thanks.
Thanks, Dana. Okay, Bob.
Okay, I think Nick nailed it. It's listening and actually showing that you're listening. You got to remember that on the National Council, there are youth representatives, but how do they connect with the youth? I mean, it's a big country, and so obviously there's social networking and all that. But I am thinking that that one of the big things that we need to do just generally on council is have the council do a better job of representing and making it easy for council to represent. Maybe pay them to actually travel, go and meet, have that happen. But that's National Council. And then my last 40 seconds here, because I am timing myself. I think at the EDA level as well, there needs to be more of an effort made by EDAs to bring young Greens on. I know that sometimes that means you can't be meeting during the day, you can't have a whole bunch of retired people, and getting people on, I think is a huge and important way of bringing Greens up through the governance structure of the Green Party of Canada. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, well, that was a good segue to what will be our next question. And after we go through this one, then Mark will be choosing a question from the chat. So in each of these sessions so far, the question has come either from the audience or the candidates themselves have volunteered that EDAs need to be supported to remain active between elections. How could federal council's mandate require the executive director to make this a priority? And please be specific if you can. And we will start with Nick.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I heard something in one of these sessions that was really disturbing, that federal council isn't supposed to interact with the EDA. So I might risk sounding like I'm going to be breaking some rules here, but I don't believe there can be justice when rules and laws are absolute. So what I pledge to do, if elected, first thing I want to do is, whether it's as a council member or as a director at large, or maybe wearing my Civic Greens hat, I'm going to reach out to all the EDAs and I want to hear from them. What's going on their ground there? What worked for them this last campaign? What's not working for them right now? And then I want to share what I've learned in this process. One of the greatest tools that we've started employing as a Civic Greens is a SWOT analysis, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We do this annually, and it is incredibly useful at identifying what resources we have around us and how we move forward to be able to connect with more people. The EDAs are the lifeblood of our party, as are the members. We need to connect with them, we need to listen to them, and we need to empower them and show them the next steps. Whether that's through direct contact, or another thing I'm really popular and big on, creating riding associations and neighboring EDAs working together and sharing tips and tricks on how to do things. People in Vancouver, we don't need to tell people in Kelowna what's up. People in Victoria, Vancouver Island, they know what island folks are about. It's time for those EDAs to work together for a common good, share resources, and share knowledge.
Thank you, Nick. And Lisa is next.
Hi there, Megan. Okay, so change will come with change in the governance structure at the federal level, such that if you had the council and the executive director mandated to interface with the EDAs, you would bring about that change. At this point in time, it's just the executive director which interfaces with those organizations. The rest of the council interfaces with the executive director. So with a structural change in council and a mandate to interface with the EDAs, that would answer that question, and the change would come. I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Dana.
Yes, thanks. Asking specifically what I think that both Nick and Lisa touched on, pointed to something that's stuck in the way. First of all, we need to know what is the problem with EDAs themselves. Where do they interface with council? Lisa, I think, described it in terms of the way it's currently structured. Clearly, there are built-in obstacles to the connection between federal council members and EDAs. Something has to give. And given that here we are in British Columbia, the membership will be voting for a council rep from British Columbia, and somehow that council rep can't connect and communicate with British Columbia, either at the EDA or membership level. These are things that, number one, need to be clarified, and two, have to be cleared up, indeed. Otherwise, this representative system is not representative. So I'm certainly, as was indicated in the MGNR report, pre-report, on some of the aspects of the campaign, there were clearly some stumbling blocks, some roadblocks here that need to be looked at. Much of it goes back to the structure. It has to do with governance. We need to change, changes need to be made. And those of us who come on to council next time around need to take a hard look at what needs to change and then guide the organization accordingly. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Okay, next is Bob.
Okay. I think one of the things we need to be more aware of, perhaps, is that we're talking about EDAs in a very general sense. And we're talking about EDAs there's 338 in Canada, from the size of Sanish Gulf Islands, with lots of money, volunteers galore, all sorts of capability, history, experience, down to some that aren't really functioning EDAs from year to year. So it's not an easy question to and there's no one plan fits all. I think the regional idea is a good one. Let's see if we can find a strong EDA that can help other EDAs in the area, and that already is happening, and it tends to happen. But Yeah, it's not an easy question, but we've got to not come with a one plan fits all. I think in this particular case. So, thank you.
Thank you. And George.
I took 2 days off in 9 months when I was running in the election. I worked really hard. I had an EDA that was just as sharp as a tack. Dave Hunter, the head of the EDA, a large project manager for IBM. I had the best, brightest people I could find. We ran a grand campaign, and nobody from head office ever came to us afterwards and said, best practices, what did you do that worked? And there are 338 places in this country where best practices were accumulated, and then they're gone. I only heard from the executive director of the party with a dear occupant letter 3 weeks after the election, then to find out that that person no longer had the job. So I think we're looking at this backwards. We are not the grassroots in the EDA. We are the party. The administration, the accounting is head office, but we are the party. And so this notion that governance has to change, I embrace entirely. We're looking at it upside down.
Thanks very much. Okay, I think people have been putting questions in the chat. So Mark, have you got a question for the candidates?
Yes, I do, Megan. There are several questions here. A couple of them actually relate to the question that you just asked. So you obviously hit a nerve there, and I hope the people that asked those questions got adequate responses. So the next question comes from Ryan. I'll read what he's written here. In BC, there are strong Green parties on the provincial and municipal levels. However, at times the relationship between the federal party has been strained. How would you work to rebuild trust between these parties and act as a diplomat representing the federal party when working with the other levels?
Okay, could you just read the last part of the question again, Mark?
Yes, how would you work to rebuild trust between the federal Greens and the other levels of Greens, municipal and provincial, in BC?
Okay, thanks very much. We will start this round with Lisa.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for the question. So I think where that process has to start is with transparency and complete truth to what happened in the past election. And as I said in my statement, a complete postmortem of what happened in the electoral districts and with the campaigns, and a conversation around what worked and what didn't work. The report that was put forth by the Members for Growth and Renewal it's an excellent read, and I haven't been through all of it, but it's that kind of approach that will repair that relationship and generate the trust. And at present, the council doesn't have the ability to interface with the EDAs like that. It's all through the executive director. So I really do think that a lot of these initiatives will come to fruition with a reworking of the governance structure at the federal level. That's all.
All right, thank you. And next is Dana.
Yes, thanks for the question, Ryan, and come no surprise to Ryan and a couple others. Having two things bring a bit of an advantage to me on this issue. One of them, having run for the provincial Greens and having come out of nowhere to run for the provincial Greens, and then moving, when that moment passed, to get involved with the federal Greens. It wasn't until I joined the federal Greens and began some conversations that I realized there was even a problem that there was an issue, that there was friction. And the way I treat it, being new enough, it's in the past. I see many opportunities, some of them very practical. Some of them are being, I think, looked at already. The idea of Vancouver Greens and regional, on a regional basis, getting together an office, sharing an office between perhaps regional and provincial, and perhaps with possibility of creating a federal office presence, in, at least in, if not in Vancouver, maybe elsewhere, other parts as well. It's a practical start to putting people together. After all, and I've said this many times, we're all the same people. I mean, that part's real. They're green, no matter, you're no greener or less green if you move from federal to provincial to municipal. It's the same people everywhere. There's no reason for this to happen. And if it's happening, if it's occurred on a regional basis, I think we've really got to just put our minds to, well, what is it we share? What are our commonalities? What can we share practically? And then look to see if there are specifics that need to be addressed, put them on the table and deal with them one at a time. Perhaps someone with more information will have to fill me into what's really wrong, because I see only opportunity in fixing. Thanks.
Thanks, Dana. Okay, next is Bob.
I think this is a brilliant idea. One of the things we have, one of the strengths we have as Greens is the fact that we are not just the party goes from municipal to provincial all the way through to global. So, and actually I've already started because I tried to, well, I know Adam Olsen to begin with, of course, because he's my MLA, but starting to work with the provincial Greens. And I talked to Wes Reagan about maybe a regional office that could be shared because the BC Greens are coming up with an election next year. So they're getting started. Maybe we could share an office. They would take it in Vancouver, likely. But yes, and bottom line is we've got to meet with them face to face, get together, talk, and work out, meet. I spend too much time with federal Greens and not enough time talking to the provincial and certainly the municipal Greens. So something I intend to do.
Thanks. Okay, and George.
I get to go last and agree with everybody else, but everybody else has hit the nail on the head in a variety of ways. We are all just green. Everything else is administration. And if administration gets in the way of us communicating, we need to change the administration. I've been involved with the BC Greens. I've gone to events with the municipal Greens. I'm a member of the BC Greens. I'm a member of the federal Greens. I talk to everybody. I don't see the distinctions. I know there's problems. I know there's walls. The walls are only there. Well, I'll put on my conspiracy hat. The walls are there to protect power, to protect somebody's position in a certain place. This is a conversation that we all have to have with our fellow Greens. And through that, moving up, we can change things, and we will.
Thanks. And no, you didn't get to go last because we still have Nick. Go ahead, Nick.
My apologies.
That's fine.
Thanks. So I kind of hate to break it to everyone, but we already share an office, all three levels. We do in the Dominion building. The federal party and the Civic Party has been sharing that office for over a decade. The provincial Greens just signed on in November to rent out some space there. So what we have here is a failure on the federal's part to not only communicate, but understand what we have. On the Van Center Board of Directors, no one ever reached out to us to ask if there were any resources like this. I can speak from the civic point of view that there was an attempt to reach out from the federal party, but the notice was pretty short and the terms to that meeting were already decided. We need, as federal, I'm gonna put my federal hat back on, we need to listen. I've heard other candidates in other Skype sessions and Zoom sessions mention, oh yeah, and then we'll get the provincial Greens to do this. We are not the same party. The voter might see a green as a green as a green, but we need to respect that we are different levels of party with different organizations. So we need to listen, and we need to take our cues from PEI to New Brunswick to BC to Vancouver. Let's be honest, folks, these parties are more successful than our federal party. So what we need to do is we need to engage in good faith, and we need to listen, and we need to trust. We can't just go in calling the shots. We need to hear what they have to say.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, Mark, I think there's been quite a bit going on in the chat. So do you have another question?
Yes, I do, Megan.
Okay.
From Maureen, she has expressed a concern that in the past, sometimes BC reps in particular have not always seemed to have either an understanding or the time to commit to doing the job of being a federal council rep adequately. So the question is, What is your understanding of how much time commitment is required to be a counselor, and how much are you prepared to commit to that role?
Excellent question. Okay, we'll start with Dana on this round.
Somehow I knew this was coming. In this regard, I put my own devotion and reputation on the line in terms of dedication to the time. As it happens, I've come to know some of the efforts of some, particularly the likes of executive member like our English Vice President David Hunter, a sense of the amount of work he puts in. I've communicated with a number of at the EDA level and recognize the background effort that some who've worked on committees have also had to put in that involves the federal representative. And so I'll make it a short answer. I will put whatever effort it takes to do this job properly, to what I foresee as being tempestuous times, perhaps, going forward, but times that where a good deal of work will have to be done, and hopefully it will draw down to a norm. It's still committed work in the longer term, but I will be there to make my contribution as needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Okay, Bob, go ahead.
I just have to start by letting Nick know I'm quite aware of the office that's in Vancouver. I talked to Wes Reagan about it, but it's not suitable, not for a campaign office. It's not big enough, according to Wes. Yeah, so I just wanted you to know that I think sharing that was a great idea. To answer the question, how much time? Certainly less than when I was president. I'll tell you that. That was an amazing amount of time. But my wife says I spend way too much time on the Green Party stuff. I intend to get in trouble with my wife. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And George.
If I say anything about getting in trouble with my wife who's listening, I'm in trouble now. I stepped away from teaching a number of years ago to be involved with interesting project work for social value. I make documentaries. I stopped making documentaries. I ran for the Green Party. I worked as hard as I could, as long as I could. And I'm not going to say I will do this full time, but I'll do this full time.
All right.
That's what it's going to take.
Thank you. Nick.
Just before I jump to it, I'm gonna fire back a little bit at Bob there. We're not talking about a campaign office. We're talking about an office to regionally work out of. And I don't know the last time that Wes was by the office. From my knowledge, he wasn't even really aware of the office's position when he reached out in the start of the year. But we've renovated the office to include 6 workstations. And the idea is that this type of office would be something that we can coordinate logistical and branch out from there. Now, what I'm posing in my second point that I'd like to do is I'd like to reallocate more resources for a bigger space. But to the question at hand, what we need to do, or what the expectation should be, is what we can bring in around us. Now, I will fully admit, I have a full-time job. I work with a game company. But what I'm very good at doing is bringing other people in who can help build the party and reach out. And I'm looking at 4 other candidates here who are passionate, who are driven, and who have connections. So if I were to be the successful winner, I would look at, in a way, deputizing all of you to help build our party and help reach out. My girlfriend got so fed up with all my green stuff, she ended up joining. 2 of my best friends, my videographer and my carpenter, who helps me build campaign offices when I find them. I think it's on us. I can't just quantitatively say I will work 40 hours a week. What I can tell you is I will bring in quality individuals who will grow us even further.
Thanks, Nick. And last on this round is Lisa.
Thanks, Megan. So as you know, I am a physician. I am mid-career. I am not retired. I am prepared to put in the time necessary to advance the objectives of inclusion and transparency and an agenda of reforming this council so that it does have a more wide-reaching focus and strategy. As far as number of hours per week that I could dedicate to this, there's no way for me to say. But I am lucky in that I have a specialty that has flexibility built into it, in that I could take the necessary time for the meetings that are required and do the preparation. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, Mark, is there another question we could address? Mark, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Megan. Getting carried away here. Several people have asked about diversity in the party. I'll read what Amita has brought up here. She would like to know what the candidates would do to improve diversity and inclusion in the party, and what do they think the biggest challenges are with this issue. How will we know when we have solved the diversity and inclusion problem in the party?
Excellent. Okay, we'll start with Bob.
Okay, it's the how will we know? That's the one that's. I mean, I know already that there is a movement afoot within National Council to include more diversity. I think we need to all do that. I think that has to go right down to the EDA level. And I think, from my sense anyways, that there seems to be a movement or a acceptance that that's a good idea, and we go forward. Measurement, I've got to say, I do not have an answer for you just off the top of my head, but I'll look into it.
Okay, thanks. And George is next.
It's an interesting exercise being a member of the Green Party and looking like me. I'm the settler generation. I'm the settler people. My people came here, disrupted everybody 150 years ago, and have never let go. And I don't say this glibly. There's something I think called settler guilt. My job, as I see it in this party, is to get in, impose as many fixes as I can possibly do, and then get out of the way. The problem with the Green Party is, in the public eye, we all look like me, and that's entirely non-productive unless you want to recruit old white folks. We need to have a revolution, and to have a revolution that's successful, we need to get out of the way. So I'm kind of speaking against my interest. I think Nick's probably a much better person in this regard because he's half my age. But we're all of a similar ilk on this panel, and I think to a large degree we're seen as the problem. So whoever of us gets in, and we're all good people, whoever gets in, we need to make what changes we can and then get out of the way. That's my thought.
Thanks. Okay, Nick, go ahead.
I want to thank Amita for the question. They bring up a really important question, and this speaks to the soul of the party. It's not about how we become more diverse. We have to create the environment for diversity and inclusion to come in. We need to create a safe environment, and we don't have that right now. I've seen firsthand some pretty shocking and sad things to young people, to diverse people, to women. And from my understanding, there is a motion that was passed on federal council to mandate some form of diversity and inclusion training. This has to be where we start. We also need to bring forth decolonization. William, representative from the territories yesterday, nailed it on the head. Before we can go out to these groups and bring them in, the environment we're bringing them into has to be safe. We need, I've seen members misgender other Green members online. I've seen dismissive remarks made to the youth, made to women, people discouraging young women not to run. This can't stand. This can't be how we do this. And to answer the end of the question, how will we know? We won't. The work never stops. We must pledge to constantly learn and reach out new forms of understanding. The second we stop, is the second we stop learning. And the second we stop learning, we stagnate. We can't have that happen.
Thanks, Nick. And Lisa, go ahead.
Thanks, Megan. Nick raises a lot of great points. He has a lot of points that that do speak to how to make a more diverse group of people, a more diverse party, and I support those ideas. I think that what the Green Party needs to do is get back to its core values and propagate those core values in a way that is a coherent, strategic kind of message that will resonate with the country. I think there are a lot of people in the country who really do believe in the green core value system and in the values that they espound, and they either haven't voted green or don't vote green because they're afraid that a green vote is a vote that's not strategically placed. So to me, if the federal council was able to reinforce these 6 core values in a way that would be a strong, cohesive message, they would increase by default the diversity of the Green Party and include more members, including people that would tend to vote conservative, but don't like the conservative social agenda. And how you measure this is by winning ridings. That's it.
Thank you. And Dana.
Well, tough question to unpack in a minute and a half. First of all, I agree with Nick at the term safe environment is critical to any and all of what we do on diversity and inclusion. Second, I make the point, I've worked on this topic, the diversity, and I'll speak to diversity in industry, specifically for me, the construction industry, specifically for me, the building trades, specifically with First Nations and women on that issue. But I also see it crop up more and more with the whole notion of young people as another diverse element. Part of it is knowing what is it we seek, and then if we go back to that point about a safe environment as the goal, and we're speaking the language in all other ways, and we get rid of the opportunities for abuse and deal with the abusers, then we at least begin to clear the road a little bit to enable some of the things that we want to happen. There are some very practical steps that can be taken if we know what it is that needs, the specifics of what need to be addressed. I think those are, we take this, and it all goes back to both the listing and the conversations with those to understand who is being left out, what are the circumstances for that, and what specifically needs to change to enable that inclusion.
Thank you. Okay, the next question refers to volunteers, and this has come up in some of your responses already. Everyone acknowledges that volunteers are essential to winning a campaign, but could volunteers play a bigger role all the time in the Green Party? In a previous session, a candidate mentioned having high-level volunteers from the membership be involved in Green Party committees. Do you see a role for volunteers on council or shadow cabinet committees? And if so, please elaborate. And we will start with George.
I'm having trouble imagining somebody, one of the volunteers I had, we had probably 70 volunteers in North Van, and they were interested in the work of the election. I think if I approached any of them and said, how would you like to sit on a committee, they'd look at me sideways. They want to feel like they have a potency and a power. That's because they're in it with their hearts. And if we can't engage them with their hearts, then we haven't got them. So the notion of involving them in committees, no. We should be creating year-round activities. The Green Party shouldn't just be an electoral machine. We should be a social movement. And in that social movement, we should be doing what's required to move society to our perspective, to educate the world. So volunteers should be involved in that capacity. All the ones I had working on my campaign, that's what they wanted to do. The campaign's over. Green Party said, essentially, we have no more use for you. And that's a waste. That's a monumental waste. And I think we can turn that around, but we have to do something other than just run elections and then go to sleep.
Okay, thank you. Next is Nick.
I'm going to give a shout out to the one person who's taught me everything about volunteer engagement, Tracy Dundas. She's the reason I'm with the party. The work I've watched her do with our volunteers civically and federally is phenomenal. She's organized monthly get-togethers, moving across the city of Vancouver to engage with people from all of those campaigns. I remember my first times volunteering with the party at our car-free days. She engaged with me nonstop. She let me speak my mind. She shared her opinions. She wasn't willing to tell me when she thought I was out of place, and I appreciate that. But she made me more interested in getting involved. And again, like I mentioned with this amazing civic party that I've had the fortune of working with these last 3 years, they made me feel welcome. They made me feel like my input mattered. And now I'm the vice chair. So we need to do the same with our federal volunteers. We need to engage with, the most important time to engage with volunteers is between election cycles. We need to engage with volunteers. We need to engage with members. We need to engage with the population at this time. It's not during a campaign you do that. If you do that during a campaign, you've already lost. You need to be engaging now. You need them to feel valuable. You need their opinions heard. So like so many things, we do it by listening to them.
Thank you. Lisa, go ahead.
Thanks, Megan. I 100% agree with what George had to say. He summarized it very nicely. The role I would see for council in terms of utilizing this expertise that is mobilized in the volunteers between elections is just as he said, to bring them into the mix and have them participate on committees to utilize their expertise year round. Like they need to be an essential part of the voice at the federal level. That's all.
And Dana, go ahead.
I thought I was a volunteer. Are we getting paid for this? I'm kidding. I think first of all, I mean, volunteers have a role in many aspects of party operations. Maybe it was the question I found a little awkward. What I think council can do and be looking towards is how do we facilitate the opportunities for volunteers to enable them to do what they do best. So whether it's as George and Lisa suggest, they're volunteers, they got stuff to do, they want to do it that way, get in, get out, and then get out of the way. Or there are specializations, obviously special skills that are always in need. I think we need to have a stable of committed and qualified volunteers in a whole range of activities and be able to share them throughout the party, particularly, most obviously on a regional basis perhaps, but so that we can move quickly on some things where there are weaknesses, be it through an election campaign or organizing events. I mean, I think those are useful, are uses for volunteers that can provide a level of service to us where everyone can feel some gratitude for their participation, and there's a reward for the volunteer in terms of giving what they do best and participating in an organization that appreciates them for what they do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Bob.
I'm going to start my timer because this is a really good question. The question was having volunteers involved with council and also shadow cabinet. And really what we're dealing with there is on council, that's how we do things. So actually getting people onto volunteers, onto the EDA executive, getting them involved with events, with potlucks, with, well, of course, obviously during campaigns, but that's one route and one that I think we've all seen. The other one, though, that's interesting is shadow cabinet, because that's more policy development. And one of the things I'd like to do is to I know people that are super interested in all sorts of policy development areas. That could be solar and pipelines and water, environment, all sorts of amazing amounts of things, and they're very much into it. Being able to get them involved, the volunteers to do that, we need to do a better job of our policy development online, maybe face-to-face meetings, and that sort of thing. So I think that those two areas for different people in different ways are the way we could move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark, do we have another question in the chat?
We do, and this one actually relates to the one that has just been covered. It's from Frank, who makes the statement that membership in a political party has never been appealing to the majority of Canadians. And he's wondering how federal council and the party itself could help improve or expand the sense of ownership that members have in the party. Could the party offer resources or bring the members into decision-making processes outside of voting for representatives? So the question is, how can members be given a greater sense of ownership and stake in the party beyond just voting for their reps?
Okay, thank you. Thanks to Frank for that question. Nick, we'll start with you this time.
A stat that's always really intrigued me in these last couple of years is hearing that, especially with Green Party supporters, more so than any other party, they're not interested in becoming members. And I think this speaks to the social subconsciousness of what we're seeing as a species on this planet, the environmental degradation of our planet. So we need to understand that even though they're not members, we have a huge amount of support out there. So Frank's asking me, how do we connect with them? How do we make them feel valuable? Well, I think what we need to do, and a very useful tool, are subcommittees. Some people who don't want to be a member, they don't want to run for a federal council position or be on the shadow cabinet, but they have ideas, they need to be brought into these committees where they can share their ideas and be given the space to explore and bring in new ideas and resources. This is fundamental on how we engage with our supporters who aren't necessarily wanting to be members. So I would find commonalities and common grounds in what they are good at, what they are passionate about, and direct them to those subcommittees where they can help us structure the policy ideas and the directions we need to go to better connect with Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
Thanks, Nick. And Lisa, go ahead.
Thanks, Megan. I think that the Green Party needs to double down on that idea, on the truth that the Green Party is different. It's not like other political parties. It doesn't whip its votes. It is not business as usual or politics as usual. And I think that appeals to a great number of Canadians and people like me who used to be Americans and now are Canadians. Anyways, I really think that that goes a long ways. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Dana.
My comment here is first of all, I agree with the analysis about the general picture of people not joining. And I think it's not only true of our party, I think it's true of others as well. Other parties may be more attractive because they have a bigger machine for which they can plug in members. So I think the route to go is to spin off a little of what Nick was saying, is that we have a lot of people have a lot of talent. They want to share that. They want to share what they know. They need a place to take it. I think one of the things that we need to do is to build bridges with other organizations that share a lot of our purpose, that are our objectives. And not to say these necessarily are, but whether it's Extinction Rebellion or Lead Now or any number of subgroups that exist within various communities that have clearly shown an alignment with what we do and where we come from as the political articulation of a lot of these goals. I think that's where we can build bridges and utilize what people are already doing and bring more of information about that into the party, and then articulate that through our own process, through our own structure. I think that would be a good way to make use of people not necessarily members, but willing to tag along. Thank you.
Thanks. Bob, you're next.
Okay, that just follows from what I said before, finding out people that are interested in events, in potlucks and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's one thing, to get members keen to be a member, to be part of the party. The other one is the policy development, people that are interested in particular areas and they want to have a say. That's another one. But I think overall, I think Lisa's right. Particularly coming from the States, the party that is different, that's the Green Party. And I think a lot of people, there's so many people out there that are ticked off with the way politics is now, certainly in the US, Canada as well. There's a lot of people. And I think that if we could get across the idea that you could be a member of a party that's different, where we really are grassroots, and then we're going to have to do something about that as well, like policy development, all this kind of stuff. I think that's the key to this whole thing.
Thank you. All right, and George.
Some months ago after the election, I approached GPC and said, what we need to do is embed somebody in Bernie Sanders' campaign. They would embrace us because they are world-class experts at doing exactly what we're talking about. We could have learned from the best in the world how to recruit, how to form a tribe, how to get people feel like they have a sense of ownership. And I was told I might hear something. We never did it. That's still an opportunity. There is grand wisdom about how to do this that exists in the world outside of our party. We can reach out, we can find it. We don't reach out as a party. We wait for people to come to us. When they wake up, they'll become green. And that's our failing. If we just wait for people to come to us and put them on a committee, no. We need to find some way to give people a sense of belonging to a community, a tribe, some ownership in the process, some empowerment. And there's expertise out there, and we can get it.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, some members have expressed concern over a lack of transparency in the way the Green Party operates. For example, excessive use of in-camera meetings for issues other than personnel. In what ways do you think the party could be more transparent to its members? And we will start with Lisa on this round.
Thanks, Megan. I think I've answered this in some of the previous questions that were asked and in my opening statement. I think that transparency is the key to this in terms of building a bigger, stronger, better party that has the ability to win elections. And that's going to start with a restructuring of the governance at the federal council level. And these in-camera meetings, which I'm picturing in my mind as being an insider crowd of in-the-know members that have agendas that aren't transparent to the rest of us, that has to quit. The council should have a structure that is completely open to its members and truly does represent its members. I do not know how this council got to the point that it is now, but it's destructive. So anyways, that's a long answer to embellish what I've already said. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. And Dana, you're next.
Sure. Again, in many ways, it is an easy answer. First of all, you decide transparency is essential. It has to, you could decide at what levels, if you will, of how much need to be known by how many, but opening up a lot of more information to the party members themselves would be helpful. The comments, and I've heard comments and criticism about minutes being very short and to the point, without the background information as to why a certain decision was made, as well as, of course, the general complaint we've heard already about the number of times going in camera. I don't pretend, I will not jump on anybody for something that I don't know more about, but this is a persistent complaint of the lack of availability of common information. I have one bone to pick on as myself, which I'm happy to explore with any. I do not understand. It's the only organization I've ever belonged to where I can't look up a number and a connection to another member without going through a gatekeeper on Gvote. to make that happen. Never, I could never imagine such a thing, but nevertheless, it seems to be the case. We have opportunities to be more transparent, a range of issues, documentation, information, and we should be working hard to make that so. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, well, obviously be more transparent, right? More detail in the minutes. If you're in-camera meetings, that's basic stuff. But right now, members can sit in on National Council meetings, and hardly anyone does. They can hear what's going on. So I think it's going to be incumbent on us, or as a representative, to get that. Go to the meetings, spend the time, get the information, and get it out to people. That's basically it.
Okay, thank you. Next is George.
I have a novel idea. Transparency, yep. Why does the media not cover us? Because we go into a room and we close the door and say, what happens in here is none of your business. But we want to do things differently, but we're doing it like the other guys do. So why not proactively be transparent, open the door, invite the media to watch what we do while we do it? Not all of it. There's in-camera stuff, there's the personnel issues, there's financial things we may not want, but if we want to be seen as that party, we need to open the doors. The media don't cover us because we're not available to them. So if we want our story to be told, we have to own our story, own up to it, tell our story without fear or favor, warts and all, and it'll make us understood. And that's one step towards getting us votes.
Thanks. Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Well, I think Lisa was able to kind of start to hit the nail on the head here with transparency, but the key to this, to transparency, is communication. When we have nothing but a silence and a void, people will fill it with hearsay and rumors. So we as a party need to do a better job to communicate. Now, in-camera is an important tool that boards need to use. Privacy needs to be respected from members when dealing with very sensitive topics. But I've read those minutes. One of the things I noticed is they only seem to be in one language. We are a bilingual nation. So we're cutting out a province already by having our minutes only in English. We need to make sure that we're communicating and we're giving membership an opportunity to know what's happening, what's going on. This kind of outreach will soothe the concerns that many members have. We can do a better job of communicating in our minutes what is happening, and we need that's upon us to do. So the key to transparency is communication. That's what we have to do.
All right, thanks very much. Mark, do we have another short question in the chat? If not, I have a short one I can ask.
I do have one, Megan.
Okay.
This comes from Chris, and he is asking, how can our BC representative advocate for the future of all Canadians during their strategic planning and developing a budget? And Chris is mentioning specifically economic future or other futures. So this question may well get into clarifying some of the functions of federal council in answering that question.
I'll just ask you to repeat the question again.
How can you, as a representative, advocate for the future of all Canadians during strategic planning sessions and or developing budgets?
Okay, Dana, we'll start with you.
Good, thanks. First of all, I think that is the role of the party. That's the party we stand for. I think that, having been now schooled and skilled on a number of platform issues for a lengthy period of time, as I did in the last election, I certainly feel like I have a good handle on the things that I believe are necessary for economic change in our country to help advance us on that road, and to ensure that the party continues to, without mixing platform, policy, etc., the roles for forming all of those belonging spread throughout the party for different reasons. I think it's clear the part that the council can do is keep the focus on who we are, what we stand for, and ensure that it's reflected in our activities as council to support the party activities that are going to get us and help us achieve those goals. First internally through the operations of the party, and next as we move towards electing more representatives of the Green Party to positions of authority and positions of government.
Okay, Bob.
I can keep this one short and sweet. It's how you vote on council, and it's up to the individual person as to how they advocate for just BC or for the entire country. For me personally, because I was president, I tend to think of the whole party, and I would be advocating for all of Canada, as I obviously for BC as well, but I'm thinking about the entire country, as probably most of us would.
Thank you. George, go ahead.
Okay. I grew up in Toronto. I migrated to BC. I have driven across the country and back sea to sea. The first job I had was working in a hard rock mine up in the far north of the Northwest Territories. I've traveled the country. I've seen all of it. I've seen a lot of it. I've talked to a lot of people. I mean, that's what you do when you travel. This is before I settled down and had a family, and I got to travel and I got to learn about my country on the road. And I'm a British Columbian and I'm proud of it, and I'm a local historian. My family have grown up here, but I am above all of that a Canadian by experience, and I would bring that to what I do.
Thank you. Nick, go ahead.
Like George, I'm fortunate too to have traveled across Canada. I've toured across Canada. I played theater festivals in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, in the National Arts Centre in Montreal, the CBC stage at in Ottawa, Winnipeg, and all over BC. The thing that always amazes me about Canadians is, as unique as we can be, we are truly bonded with a common set of ideals and morality. Canadians have that reputation when you travel abroad for a reason. We're well respected and well looked to. Speaking specifically to the idea of economics and such, one of the missed opportunities we had in the last year and a half that I can speak to in BC here was a year out from the election, we had Indigenous and First Nations leaders declaring that the Green Party is the way to go. And a year later, before the election, they vowed to pledge their support to the NDP. So what happened? One of the reasons I want to reallocate some resources to BC, like staff, is because these things won't be missed. This wasn't a little thing, this was huge. If Indigenous leaders in one part of the country stand up to support our party, that will catch interest with Indigenous leaders all over the place. So one of the reasons why I want to put staff as well as an office here on the West Coast or in BC is so that they have direct lines to those communications. I've heard great things from counselors in Ontario who have a great relationship with staff. Well, that's because staff's in Ottawa.
Thank you. And Lisa.
Thanks, Megan. So how you save the world is you get Greens elected. And the way you get Greens elected is to create the conditions in order for that to happen. And that's the role of the council, to create the conditions to get more Greens elected, and then the world is saved.
Okay. Well, we are close to the half hour, and our hour and a half is pretty much over, and we want to get through the 1 minute summation for all the candidates. I apologize, there are still more good questions in the chat. You can save the chat. If the candidates are interested, you can save the chat if you wanted to read the questions that people have posted there. But we'll move ahead to the summaries, and we will start with Bob. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Okay, me, I was born in Fort William. Does anybody know where that is? It's actually Thunder Bay now. I grew up in Montreal. I worked in Vancouver and Langley. And then I went to Mississauga, back to BC. So yeah, covered the country. As far as summing up I've been there. I was president. I got a really good sense of how things work at that level in council. And the one thing that I was a little disappointed on was I think that councillors can do a better job of representing the people in their areas, of listening and doing a responsible job of representing. So for me, that'll be my big challenge going forward. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. George, go ahead.
This is going back a ways. 1969, when I was part of the start of a group called Pollution Probe. Back then, we were just starting to become environmentally aware as a people. I've been interested in and involved to some degree ever since. I'm fiercely proud to be one of the 5 people standing here. We're all great people. And I will stand behind whoever gets this. I want to stand behind a strong leader when the leadership campaign is over. I want somebody who can beat the drum and get us all up and dancing. As a federal council, we need to shake the governance tree real hard. We're running out of time. This is slipping away from us unless we take action now. Shake the tree real hard, get rid of what falls out, and let's make it happen. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, George. Nick, go ahead.
I want to finish with a little personal story with my family. It was the August of 2018, and I was preparing for another long weekend of work in prep for the civic election, and my phone rang. I picked it up, and it was my 9-year-old nephew, and he asked, "Uncle Nick, are you coming over to my house for the barbecue this weekend?" And I said, "I'm sorry, Kaito, no, I can't. I have to do this work for the election." And then he asked, "Is it with the Green Party?" And I sighed a deep sigh because this is my first experience of politics getting in the way of family. And I said, "Yes, it's with the Green Party." And then he asked me, "You guys are trying to save the world, right?" And I laughed nervously and replied, "Yeah, I guess you could say that." And he said, "That's okay. You don't have to come." That moment will never leave me. A 9-year-old child knows what's at stake. We all know what's at stake. That's why we're running. I have the connections, I have the skill set, and I have the drive to see this through. And I'm asking for all of BC's support and your vote to help us see it through. I don't want my nephew to ask me in the future, "Why couldn't you do it?" I want him to ask, "Tell me again how you did it." So let's do our part. Let's tell future generations how we did it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And Lisa, go ahead.
Thanks, Megan. So I am originally a US citizen. I was born and raised in upstate New York, and I chose to be a Canadian. And as a result, I feel like I do have a unique perspective from that vantage point. I strongly feel that council needs to do a better job to empower the people who want to do the important work that the Green Party stands for. And that's the candidates and all of those individuals that want to sit in Parliament and make the world better. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. And Dana, go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Megan. And thanks to all of you, all the other candidates, for putting your names forward and working hard to make this happen. I think all of us candidates have made statements about making changes on federal council. And it's probably not a coincidence that the more outspoken demands for change are coming from this province. Since only one of us can be elected, the task of the members is to decide who best represents what those changes should look like. The case I'm making is first to stop the stupid. I think we need to, let's identify what that is and let's change some of the behavior. My experience in working with national office and experiences reported by others, up to and including the conducting of this online discussion, indicate to me that some things are not working and they need to be fixed. It would be difficult to encourage people to join and ultimately run under this party's banner if circumstances do not change. Many candidates during the 2019 campaign heard repeated messages from voters: "Why should I vote for Green and if you can't show me that you can win?" I might put a similar question to the federal party. Why should someone join and work for a party if our efforts and contributions are going to be discouraged, sidelined, or derailed, or even just ignored? In order to be a winning party, we need a winning team. I believe in order that to be attractive to members, qualified candidates, and voters who will support this party, we need a reset in how the Green Party is governed and operated. With your support, if elected, I will do my part to make positive change to ensure that our party, this party of the future, has built the community with the capacity and the composition to address whatever the future presents according to our core principles and meeting the expectations of our membership. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Okay, that brings yet another successful session to a close. Tomorrow is the Cadet Wing session. It is a different link, but it is also a Zoom link. And then Friday is the non-regional candidates. I just want to go back to, people are still posting, but I wanted to read Mark's thank you to everyone here. He says, a huge thank you to all you candidates for being with us this evening and for putting yourselves on the line. We have a powerful slate to choose from in this election, and I dare say it won't be easy. You would all do BC Greens proud as our rep, as well as strengthen the party. Your passion and dedication are obvious and inspiring for us all. And I think that's a good reflection of the other comments that I've seen in the chat. So thank you very much to candidates. Thank you very much to the audience who joined us tonight. Greens are amazing. And so we'll see you all again on Friday, I hope. Thanks, everybody.